Hello there. We'd like to welcome you to the virtual kitchen table. We're Erin from Ever Learning, Ashley from Ashley as Mama and Storytime Shelves, and myself, Hayley from Taking a Kinder Path. We're gathering for conversations about family life and home education, particularly unschooling, which is sometimes known as self-directed learning, or as I like to call it, natural learning. We'll be sharing our experiences and ideas, learning as we go. We hope you'll pull a chair up to the table and join us.
Yes, see, when people ask you, is it too late? You know, if their kids are in high school or even adults, I agree with you. It isn't. There's so many things that we can learn and continue to kind of deepen and put into practice as our kids get older. And the other thing, Sue, you had sent on back, I think, was just, you were kind of talking about, I'm maybe going to get this wrong, but I think it was related to unconditionally loving because it's the right thing to do. And so I think that that's the other thing that I'm not saying we, but maybe kind of the thinking comes so much from different methods of schooling and education being tested and seen if they work. You know, is this working? Does this type of parenting work? Or what kind of outcome will you get if you do this? And I think when we're talking about things like kindness and unconditional love, it's not about the outcome. We're doing it because that feels right within our family. When we're in respectful relationship, whether we get a certain outcome or not is actually not the point. And I think that gets lost a little bit because I think so much of the writing and thinking around parenting and education is about outcomes. And it can be helpful to have some of that. I mean, there have been some really good studies done around homeschooling and around unschooling. And those I think are really helpful to have. It's good to have some of that data. And, you know, I think it's really useful for that to be looked into on a more sort of academic or measurable level. But I don't think that's not where I'm coming from when I'm making a kind of setting a real intention to move forward with my kids with kindness and unconditional love. It's really not going to get me. Yeah.
I think a lot of people start with their education, unschool for education, but I think that is the least important of it all, is the learning, what you can learn, because you can learn anything, anytime whatsoever. You don't have to learn everything in those years. And kids will learn anyway, regardless of what parents are trying to teach them. But I think the important thing, what kids need during those years, is that love, the respect, so that when they go out at the other, push them out to the world, that we don't push ours out, it's reluctant for them to go. Some of them have left home early. When they set off into the bigger world, we want them to feel confident, loving who they are, loved, all the sort of things that people don't think about usually with homeschooling, but are the most important. You want kids to go out there and feel, I'm a worthy person. I like who I am. I'm confident. I know I've got skills. I know and to go out there and think, I'm going to go out there and do what I feel called to do, maybe. And all those things we try, and all the facts and the figures that we try and cram into kids are secondary. It's how our kids feel when they leave home as people. Have we loved them unconditionally? And I feel this is so sad that parents say, well, we'll work on those relationships and things once they get bigger, once they leave home. We'll be friends with our kids then. I'm thinking of one particular viral video, which I've written about a couple of times, which really annoyed me. And she said, you've got to be tough now. Make kids do what you want them, what you think they should do now. Don't give in. All those sort of things we've been talking about. We can be friends with our kids once they leave home. But once their kids are grown up, it's too late to go back. and to give them everything that they need, that we had the opportunity to give them. All those discussions and times where we were happy to sit and chat, talk over opinions, and to reinforce, just to love them and to enjoy them, and to say, hey, give them that idea that they're really lovely people and we're glad to be part of their lives and we've got time for them, instead of you've got to learn this because you might want to do that, and you'll never succeed at that because there's no jobs with that. Forget all that. Just those relationship things. And I think lots of people say to me, how will we know if we've done enough? And I think we're thinking about enough in the wrong it's the wrong way. Have we loved enough? Have we been kind enough? Have we listened enough? Have we encouraged enough? All those sort of things. Not have we done enough maths? Have we done enough English? Have we read enough books? Because as I found out, my education started once I left school. I can't remember anything from school. I mean, as long as we don't squash kids' curiosity, they'll learn everything they need to know. What they need from us is that reinforcement that they're loved people and quite all right, just where they are. And I think so many of us have problems when we go as adults. We're so insecure. That's probably why we listen to everybody else's opinions, and why we're so reluctant to stand up for ourselves and our children, because we think, well, how do they might know better than us, or we want to be accepted. We've never been accepted. We want to be trusted. We've never been trusted. And that quote from John Holt, is think about if we'd been brought up that way, how we would be different people. And I sometimes think that the thing we can give our kids is that gift, that they feel so secure in who they are. They're not going to make the same sort of have the same problems that we have. They're not going to have a problem with trust, or they're not going to say, oh, look, I'm going to put other people ahead of my kids. Because I think all those things that we do and find hard to let go of come from the fact we weren't unconditionally loved. However much our parents loved us, maybe we didn't get that message. We got the message that we weren't quite right, that we'd be right if we changed a bit, or we've fulfill all these expectations, if we got high marks at school or got a good career. And I think a lot of unschooling for me has been discovering who I am and realizing I'm okay. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay the way I am. That I have gifts, even though no one told me I had any. And that I've done things with my life, even though other people would say, you didn't do anything with your life because you didn't get to be the doctor or whatever. And I think, and all those kids at school who told me, I was unlikable, I was ugly. Our kids at least don't have that. But I had a lot to cast off and to realize, I'm okay. And I want my kids to feel okay with who they are, because how can they go out there? And I think we've all got a place in the world. How are they going to find their place in the world and share their talents and make a difference to other people's lives and love in their own turn if we haven't already given that to them? So get off my soapbox now.
No, I love it. I love it. So you really made me think then about sometimes I think kindness is kind of portrayed as a bit wishy-washy and weak, and it gets kind of a bad rep. I don't know, but I think there's something about that, the way you were talking then, Sue, about that kind of strength that can come from kindness, and that and if our children do have the chance to grow up with unconditional love and with kindness, that whole the strength that often gives them in terms of knowing themselves a bit more and being more in touch with their own emotions, because we've been able to accept their emotions. And the whole thing about, I think there's a quote by I can't remember, I think it might have been L.R. Noss, something about having the strength to make the world more. It's something, I can't remember the quote. I'll find the quote and we can put it in the show notes or whatever. But there's something that I'm thinking about, that internal strength that you get from being filled up with that unconditional love that maybe we feel like that we don't have, or that we're having to work so hard to get that as adults. And yet our children, if beautiful thing if they can have that internal strength. And I feel like I see that in my adult children, that they do have a different internal strength to me. I don't know. How do you feel about that? You guys, am I making sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. And as I'm listening to you guys, one of my whys, and when I'm being really honest, or when I'm having a conversation with someone who's genuinely interested in asking the question, like, why do you unschool? Like, mental health is what keeps coming up for me. And I've thought that from the beginning, is at the end of the day, how are my children feeling? Are they overall? I mean, of course, there's awful days and days that are hard, but overall, at the end of the majority of days, are they growing their confidence? Are they feeling accepted? Are they feeling loved? Which I keep hearing throughout this conversation, which I love so much, because I don't unschool because I think that's the best way for them to learn math or how to read or how to write. It's not about that. That's part of it. But it's mental health. That's the term, maybe because here where we are, it's kind of a buzzword, I guess. So that one comes to mind when I hear you guys talking about that. And it's about how do they feel throughout their childhood. So like what you were saying, Sue, right? Like, we want them to know that they're good enough as is, no matter where they are in their learning or anything else, their development. They are good enough, and we fully love and accept them where they are. And I want them to feel that the majority of the time throughout their childhood, for exactly the reasons you guys are saying. And that's a big why for me as to why. So when I have those fears that do creep in around unschooling, I go back to that. This is why we're doing this. So I've said a lot like partnership and relationship, and that's all part of it. It's because at the end of the day, I think the best thing I can try to support my children in is being strong in their own mental health, which is, I mean, that's just the terminology I'm using when I'm taking in what you guys are saying about how are they going to feel now in their childhood, and how are they gonna, where does that take them in their future and how they feel? Because I think that's I think if you have good, strong mental health, then you can do what you want to do. I mean, right? Like, you can go learn what you want to learn, or you can go, take on a job or career that you are interested in. Of course, some of them have different credentials and stuff, but if you mentally feel good about yourself and you have those skills and confidence, I think that's a good place. That's where I want my kids to be at now and then for the future.
I find there's an objection there, though, from some people. They think, well, parents, you're good enough. You're good enough. But then parents say, well, that means the kids will stop striving to learn, stop striving to become better people, because our kids aren't perfect, just like we're not perfect. And even though we accept our kids, we do want them to grow and develop, and they don't come. I think, that they have a lot of learning to do in all areas of their lives. And if we just say, well, you're good enough, we accept you, then they'll say, well, I'm good enough. I don't have to change. I don't have to learn anything. I'm just perfect right now. And I think that's where a lot of parenting comes from, is that if we tell our kids that they're good people now, or they know a lot, or we encourage them, praise them, they'll stop striving and they will stay there. And parents want their kids to fulfill their potential, which we all do, because it's a lifelong process, learning, isn't it? To become, we're not the people. I'm not the person I was 20 years ago. I'm not the person I'll be in 20 years. We're continually growing. But the thing I found, and maybe a lot of parents don't understand, because maybe it's something you got to experience, but then we've got personal experience of it, is that when people say that we're good enough and they forgive us our mistakes and they love us anyway, we want to be better people. We want to learn more. And so that's the impetus to do it. Not we know, yeah. See, my parents were the sort of parents that used to say, we do a maths test, I get 95%. And then they'll say, they used to say, well, what happened to the other 5%? And my father was always saying, well, if we praise you, you'll give in, you won't strive for more. But what happened was I gave up, because I knew I'd never satisfy them. I never reached that level. But what I have found with my own family is that when my family praise me and encourage me, and especially as a mother, I want to be the best person ever because of that love they showed me. I think, wow, they really love me. I want to be the best person. And I think that it applies to both our personal values and our educational sort of knowledge things, that we have to love both. We learn things because we love. And when we're shown love, we want to become a better person. And that is the motivation. And it's not a danger, I think, to be too kind to our kids, or to love them, show them that we love them too much, or to praise them or encourage them. And I think we actually go the other way if we hold back and say, well, I don't want them to get the idea that they're perfect as they are, so I won't say anything. And that is how people get flattened and stop striving.
I think you have a really good blog post about that, Sue. And I can't remember. Yeah, and I think, we should link that one. I can't remember what it's called, but I remember one, or it might even be in your book, the story about your children forgiving you, I think, it just reminds me of that. But I totally agree. Yeah, I think what I was going to say as well before about the kindness actually leading to kind of strength. There's also an element of our children having had lots of experience of kindness, hopefully makes them less tolerant of unkindness, and hopefully that's helping us to have a kinder world all round, isn't it? The more, that whole thing of kindness being contagious definitely is a big thing. But also there's, if you haven't had kindness, then I think it works the other way as well, doesn't it? That you are more, not that you're more accepting, because obviously it hurts, but if you're used to unkindness, then a bit more unkindness is kind of what you're expecting. Whereas if you have had the experience of lots of kindness, then hopefully, you're not going to be somebody who's going to tolerate a situation where there's lots of unkindness.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that when we talk about it not being all about what kids, it's not all about what kids are learning, but it's this important piece about love and connection. And, I agree. And yet at the same time, I don't think they're even separate things. I think that when kids are feeling loved, when they're feeling trusted, when the environment is relaxed, we learn the best. I think for people of all ages. So I think that, just as you said, Sue, kids will continue to thrive and kind of reach for things that are important to them. Really what it does is it helps give them a really settled foundation and a feeling of acceptance. And it kind of jogs me back to that idea of, how is this different in the context of unschooling, and is it fair to say that? And something that kind of pops into my mind about this is an idea that, I've seen this written about in blogs quite a bit, the idea of stealth learning or sneaky learning. I don't know if anybody else has come across that, but it's often mentioned in the context of, if a family's traveling or you're playing a board game or you're reading stories, someone will say, oh, and there's some stealth learning in there, or we can get in some sneaky learning. And I don't know. I just think, again, when we're unconditionally accepting our kids and we're just kind of having this relaxed kind of environment of learning and of trust, we're not trying to sneak in learning. We don't need to be stealthy, about the things that we're sharing with our kids, because we are accepting them as they are. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that we'd like to introduce them to, or maybe important things come up and we'd like to make sure they have some information about things. So it's not that we don't share things and bring things to the process. But I've always been interested in that idea of stealth learning or sneaky learning, because whenever I read that, that's what kind of makes me differentiate my process with a lot of conventional homeschooling. Is I think, why would I do that? Why would I sneak in learning, or why would I be stealthy? I understand it because I've had moments of it. I think most people probably have had moments of that. But I think when you're coming to a point of acceptance of who your kids are, those kinds of terms start to feel funny. Like, it just doesn't feel respectful to me when I read those. The kind of the deeper I go into deschooling, it really shifts that. So yeah, I think it all goes together when kids are feeling loved and accepted and relaxed. It's not performance pressure. They're free to be who they are and to pursue the things they're interested in. And they, I just think it's a human thing to want to keep going deeper into what you're interested in and pursuing things at a deeper level or a higher level. But it might not be our idea of that, right? So that's where that work always is. But I agree so much with you, Sue, around the learning and the healing that we have to do ourselves. Even regardless of our families, I think anybody that's kind of come through certain eras or come through the school system, it's really hard to imagine that it's okay if you make a mistake, or it's okay that you don't measure up to certain things. So again, I think that deeper work for us is so important in being able to pass that on to our kids and really live that way.
Yeah, Erin, I really think sometimes that unschooling as most people think about it is for kids, but I think it's successful only in the way parents kids will be fine. Kids will learn. It's the parent is the deciding factor. Can we let go? Can we trust? Can we respect? And all the things we worry about our kids, it's ourselves we should be more worried about, thinking about ourselves and why we're finding it hard to let go, why we're finding it hard to trust. I think kids left to themselves, they're going to learn, they're going to develop. It's our problem. We've got to, and that in a way it sounds so overwhelming. We've got to change, but it's also very, very exciting as well when you think that we have this opportunity to learn more about ourselves and connect in with our kids and give them something absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, as Haley said a long time ago, that just because you unschool doesn't mean your life's going to be perfect. But life isn't perfect, regardless of how you live your life. But we have the tools to get through all the challenges and all the difficulties because of that love that binds us all together, and we'll help each other through anything. So I think that when people say, can we unschool? And they talk about things like homeschool requirements and my child's this sort of personality and this child is not suited to unschooling. And I think it comes down to the parent, really. that's what I feel, is the parent is the linchpin of the whole thing. And a lot of parents don't really want to let go or examine why issues that are in their past. And what really, really surprises me is that sometimes you can see families that know there's something wrong and they'll replicate, and they know their childhood was wrong themselves and they hated school, say, and they'll replicate everything with their own kids. And I really can't understand why, except for the fact sometimes I've heard people say, well, it was tough, but I survived. It's made me the person I am. And I think, yeah, but you're just sort of passing it on to the next generation. And are you really happy yourself? Because we can hide a lot behind I'm tough. Isn't there something better? And I think that's a real big stumbling block, is to get past that. And maybe it's to do with being willing and open to new ideas as well, and to examining ourselves, because it's really hard, I think, to examine our past and examine ourselves and to be honest. And a lot of people don't want to go there. It seems easier just to, be part of the pack, but also I think that's easier in some ways. Stepping off the pathway does require a lot of courage.
Yes. And, it's interesting when people say that, because you do hear a lot of people say that. I survived, it's made me who I am today, or it's important to experience these things. I don't know. I think for myself, when I think of the things that I, quote, survived, especially in a school setting, because you can't really, as an adult, if something is really unhealthy or we're being targeted in some way, we can at least take steps to moving out of that situation. But I always feel it's such a sad thing to say about kids and about childhood. And I just don't feel like it. I don't know if I think it makes us stronger. I think it makes us harder. I think it hardens us. When I think of strength, I think of flexibility. I think of ability to see things from different perspectives, ability to work things out. And I think that when kids go through difficult things in their childhood or in the school system, I think we build walls. I think it hardens us. I don't think it necessarily strengthens us. So it's always an interesting argument to me. And I think too, I feel like I just want the bar to be higher than that for my kids. I don't think survival or kind of being strong against some outside force is necessarily that's not my goal. But you're right, Sue, a lot of people say that, and it's not something that you can have a quick conversation about. So yeah, people just need to make their own choices, but it is a line of thinking that I find I just find hard as well. Yeah.
I think it also connects in with what Ashley was saying about mental health of kids. And I don't think a lot of people take the mental health of anybody seriously enough, but kids in particular, and that survival, putting our kids through situations that we survived. It's cruel in a lot of ways. My mental health wasn't good at school, but it's what we did. You just had to shut up and do it. And I think that to be a child in a lot of, I'm not saying all school situations are like this, but certainly where I was, it was hard. Mentally, it was hard. I didn't enjoy my childhood at all. And is that fair on a child? And I would do anything, I think, to prevent that happening from a child. So I don't know. Gone off track maybe. I just what you were saying about survival, Erin, and I was thinking that sort of tied in with what Ashley was saying about mental health, and how mental health of our children is very important, and how we don't always take that into account. and give that value.
I'm curious what others might think about the idea of praise with our children and talking about being proud of them, Sue, because I feel like you've done some bits here and there of writing about that idea of praising our children or telling them we're proud of them. And I know that actually in some unschooling circles, that's not necessarily what people recommend. And I think it comes from the idea of overpraising, I think, or praising in ways that don't, praising for the sake of praising, but also that when we praise our children a lot, even though we're saying positive things, we're setting some degree of expectation that, that they have met our expectation in that moment. And then, of course, the absence of praise would mean that they haven't. But Sue, I can remember, I don't know, it was a while back when we had a Zoom chat in the online community, and a couple people were talking about how they think of it differently, and how praise and telling their kids they're proud of them it just feels like a really good thing within the context of their relationship. And I know you've done some writing about it. And I got thinking about it because the other day I just had this moment. I was just doing something really regular in the kitchen. And I just had this feeling come over me where, I just kind of said to two of my kids, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you guys. I just feel so proud of you. And it wasn't even really, I can think of some specifics, but I wasn't talking about anything in particular. But I wonder sometimes, and I'd be interested to hear what other people think about this, but I wonder sometimes if when we're first coming to a philosophy or a framework, if we kind of take things like principles in a more literal sense, or in we kind of go about them in a very careful way. And I think when we've established a really good foundation with our kids, and we've had a solid relationship and a trusting relationship for some period of time, I think there's more space for us to do things like that without it being taken the wrong way. So, I know one of my kids, for example, I don't know if anybody else has done any reading about love languages and the different, there's some, there's lots of good writing. I think it's Dr. Gary Chapman. So he talks about love languages and people's preferred love languages as adults, but also as children. And I definitely have a child who certainly one of their primary love languages is words of affirmation. So I really take that into consideration in the way that I interact with them, because that is a way that they really receive love. And I don't think that they feel that it's conditional. I don't think that by praising them in that sense, or saying that I'm proud of something that they've done, I don't think it takes away from our relationship or makes them feel as though my love is conditional. But I do see that a lot in not just unschooling circles, but maybe kind of natural parenting lines of thinking. Is this not over praising? And I just want to say that I do think there's a distinction. When I was thinking about this, I was remembering a children's program that I was part of. And the woman that I was working with was a real praiser, but she would say it in this kind of high, kind of chirpy voice with no real, there wasn't really a lot of substance behind it. So I can remember one day she was passing things out around a table, and these kids were pretty little. There were maybe 3 or 4. And each time that she would pass them a new color, I guess they must have been doing something with art, she would say, "Good job. Oh, good job. Good job." And suddenly she said, "Good job." And there was nobody sitting in the chair. And I remember thinking, I think that's more what we're talking about. Not just randomly saying kind of more empty words like "good job." And as it turned out in her case, she was saying it so repetitively, she wasn't even looking at the child or what they were doing. So I get where it comes from, but I'm curious what other people think in the context of this idea of like kindness and unconditional love. Just, yeah, like does it is it a fit to be telling our kids we're proud of them or praising them? Because for me, it's something that builds our relationship, I think, rather than takes away.
I think if it's about appreciation, then that's really important, isn't it? It's important for you to be able to show your appreciation, and it's really nice for other people to receive that appreciation. I suppose the problem with it is if you're using it to manipulate somebody else, which you're not, Erin. It's about genuine appreciation, isn't it? And I suppose that's where praise gets a bit of a bad rap, isn't it? It's the name praise people associate, I guess, with trying to replicate that behavior again. That whole thing of if you catch your kid being good, then praise them and they'll be good again type thing. And I guess that's where it becomes that's not you're talking about genuine appreciation and respect, aren't you? Which I think is different to how lots of people think about praise as a tool that they can use to manipulate children, and not in a trying to be mean way, but that's just how it's come, I think.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a little bit more, and I don't have a lot to say because I feel like I'm really just starting to try to figure out that with my kids. And I've reflected a bit on how I've received messages from when I was younger, or even like in my 20s when I'd have a friend say something like, "I'm so proud of you." And I kind of I knew it was coming from a good place, but it just didn't sit well with me. I kind of thought like, what do you mean you're proud of me? Like, what did you have to do with this? Like, it confused me and I didn't understand it. And then with my own kids, I think I relate to a lot of what you're saying, Erin, with like the love languages and stuff, because I've noticed that, and I was trying to think of an example. I can't think of one, but it depends so much on how that phrase is received. So Haley, like with what you're saying, I think with my one son, I mean, it just depends on how I say something, the tone, the body language, how he's feeling at the time, and what I'm commenting on how, and I haven't got it figured out yet. Because of course I want them to know, that I it's not even like proud of them. It's like happy for them. Right. And celebrating them and whatever it is they're doing or feeling. But I'm really trying to focus on being mindful of how I give praise, I guess, and just taking the time to think about it, because what's the point if it's not received in the way that I'm meaning it for them, if that makes sense.
I had the opposite experience fairly recently, in the last couple of months maybe, when I published the second edition of Radical Unschooling Love. It's probably more than that now. But anyway, my sister said to me, "Oh, I'm so proud of you, Sue." And you know what? I felt so joyful. And the same thing happened with a friend. She wrote in an email to me, "I'm just so proud of you, Sue." And I've waited my whole life for my parents to say they're proud of me, and they'll never say it. And I think we have this need for people that that mean a lot to us to say that we're okay. But I think praise has a lot to do with joy. That I praise when I feel joyful about something. Like, for example, my daughter might sing, and I think, wow, it's not that she's my daughter, it's the music, it's joyful. She's using a talent. And it's same as somebody else playing the piano or going to a concert, and that joy. And I say, "Oh, I've really enjoyed your performance. You've got a beautiful voice. Thank you." And I thank her for it. And then she feels joyful. And I think praise has to be associated with some kind of joy to be passing on. That's how I feel about it, that I praise when I feel joy about something. And when I praise somebody, usually for that reason, they usually feel joyful in return. And that's the sort of praise I feel lifts us up. It's good to feel joyful, but it also encourages us. We want to do more of it. I wanted to run out and write another book. So because my sisters were proud of me, and I think that was also, my sister was proud of me, and I think a lot of that was to do with, she thought that I was capable of writing another book. She was so proud of me, and I felt I could do anything that day. A pity I didn't sit down and finish the next book on that day, but she had to keep praising me. But that's manipulative. But it was the joy of it. It sort of swept me along, and I felt I'd done something worthwhile. That, yeah, my book, she was so proud, and whether it affects, in the big scheme of things, whether it's big or not, doesn't matter. She thought it had made a difference to her, and she was proud of me. I could do it. And that's what I feel like when we praise properly, it gives us those like wings that we can, it's like encouragement. You can do it, but you don't say you can do it or good job or anything like that, because that's lazy. I find that when we really praise, we've got to know our kids. If it's our kids, we've really got to know them well if we're going to praise them properly, because it makes us stop and listen and look at them and think and be overcome with awe sometimes. I look at my kids and I think, wow, they're, just because they're my kids doesn't mean that I can't recognize talents, virtues, whatever, and then say that brings me joy, and that pass that back to them. I think sometimes we get too afraid of praising our kids because we think, oh, look, they'll think they're better than somebody else's kids, or who it's a sort of, again, we're comparing other families, or you think your kids are better than my kids. And I think that's very important to praise other people as well. So that, I praise all sorts of people that bring me joy. I will make sure they know about it. And I think it's some simple things, like we go for coffee and I have a really good cup of coffee, and I'll go back to the barista and I'll say, that was a wonderful cup of coffee. And you can just see he smiles and he says, not many people tell me that. And you can make people's day. And I think, Hayley, it's like being kind. It ties in with being kind. And I was looking up the definition of kind last night in preparation for this conversation. And, I couldn't find a good definition. It said of being a kindly nature. They used the same word to just, there was no separate description, where you're kind when you have a kindly nature. And I thought that is not very helpful. So then I thought about kind as the opposite. What's unkind? Unkind is when we're hurtful to people. Kind isn't giving people what we're obliged to give them. It's going above that. So where you could say, well, look, I don't need to praise. I don't need to say something nice to people because, I'm not being unkind. But to be kind, we have to go above. And to go above, we have to really know people. And yes, I was just thinking of your story, Erin, about your son and the delivery and the lady who smiled. She didn't have to smile. She wasn't obliged to smile. She took the time to smile, and she gave you all so much joy that you wrote a blog post about it. And that is how I came to sort of thinking about kindness. But I think praise is being kind as well, because it's more than we're obliged to give, but it's not empty, and it's to do with joy, I think. But rather muddled thoughts there. But I just know how I feel when people genuinely praise me and say, I'm proud of you. And those two moments only happened a handful of times in my adult life. And it's mostly been sisters or friends, not my parents. Or my kids, they said they were proud of me. And I just sort of felt so warm when I can't remember maybe it was when I did my first book, Curious Unschoolers, and my daughter said, I'm so proud of you, Mum. And I just felt so warm, and I felt loved, and I felt valuable. And yeah, so I'm all in favor of praise, but I think praise is misunderstood, and even I don't understand it properly. I just know how it makes me feel and how it makes other people around me feel. But I think that's another thing, is that a lot of unschoolers, they don't praise, and it's become a bit like a rule. You're not supposed to praise. And so when I started writing about it, I thought, oh, these other unschoolers are going to come along and say, hey, she doesn't know anything about unschooling. Of course you don't praise. And then I just a good job, it's down the track, because I was there to say, oh, I don't care. I don't care if we got a different opinion. Well, we're entitled to our opinions and we can discuss it. But years ago, I would have said, oh, I'll keep quiet about that one. I'll praise in quiet, in secret, and I won't tell anyone. Or I might have changed my mind about the whole thing. But yes, I think we're looking at it from different angles, different view of what praise is and the effect it can have on other people. But I think it's all to do with joy, not manipulation. And there's nothing bad about passing on joy to other people, is there? So I've got to open the door, let the dog out.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that, thank you, because I feel like each of you, I mean, Haley, yes, that differentiation about, you're not doing it to manipulate. You're not doing it to try to push. You're not doing it to try to push a child to do what you want. And then, Sue, this whole piece around it having to do with joy, I hadn't thought of. But you're right, because that was what I was experiencing that moment in the kitchen. I just felt this joy that I just wanted to tell them that and I can't even remember exactly what it was. Just that moment of feeling so fortunate, probably for a number of reasons, to kind of be in their company and have them in my life. And I felt that joy and wanted to express it. So I love the fact that you attach that to the word joy, because I really wouldn't have thought of that, but that's so true. And then Ashley, just around like figuring it out and the kind of watching the body language and the individuality of each child, that comes back, I think, very much to what I was thinking, that so much of it is around our relationship with our child. So, when we talk about some of the, maybe the writing or the ideas within unschooling, we don't have to be following things to such a T of, what so-and-so wrote or what so-and-so said. I think once we've really established that relationship, there's just room sometimes to do what's kind of feeling natural to us in the moment, whether that's praising a lot or whether that's maybe making a suggestion about something to do or something that they could do a little bit differently. I think once we've established that relationship, there's just so much more room to do that. Whereas I think when people are starting out, they're really trying to look at this list of principles and kind of figure out how to implement it. And I think once our kids trust us that we're in this accepting and trusting relationship, it's a whole different ballgame. So thank you. It kind of makes me think about it all the more, but that gave just some language, I think, to what I was thinking about. Haley, it must be incredibly late where you are. You're well past midnight in the UK, I think. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has anything else. I had one other thing that I just wanted to add, and actually it relates back a little bit, Haley, to what you were talking about back in the conversation around maybe people kind of having a bad opinion or being a little bit concerned about too much kindness, too much unconditional love. And I was just thinking about how my experience of it is it's not just one direction. It's kind of like a household and a life of kindness and unconditional love. So when I think about it, I don't think of it as just coming from me to my child, but also to other family members, to neighbors, to friends. And I've just kind of modeling it in general in little tiny ways. Like I've been trying to pay attention a little bit to, like, just for example, we've had these cottontail rabbits in various stages in our backyard, and some tiny new ones were born a few weeks ago, very, very little, like so little, just out of the nest the one night, I think. And my daughter had we have a cat that always tries to run away. So he goes outside now on a harness. And just the two of us trying to, I mean, it wasn't a big conversation, but we were like, okay, well, how can we time this so that the cat still gets his time, but we don't want to put the bunnies at risk? And we just kind of had this conversation about how to navigate that so that all the animals could have things, you know, as safe and fair as possible. And I thought that's such a little thing. And my daughter's a teenager, so that's not such a big deal. But I think when kids are little, those are the pieces that we're modeling, right? We're modeling, how are we kind to our neighbors? How are we kind to animals? How are we kind in a way that it can work for more than one person at the same time? And that kind of goes back to that idea around power. There doesn't always have to be a winner or a loser. There are solutions when we're coming from a place of kindness and love. It's so much bigger than us just giving that to our child. We're also modeling it in many different ways. So that was just a tiny example, but I've kind of been keeping my eyes open around those different things. And I think especially when kids are little or even younger, those are the pieces. It's not about pouring so much on them that they don't think about anybody else. It's actually about kindness as a lifestyle and love as a lifestyle. So does anybody else have anything else before we say, well, I guess good day to Sue and good night to Haley? So, no, we're good.
Maybe just, you know, in a way, we're talking about whether the relationship between unconditional love and kindness. Well, we can be kind to everybody, can't we? That everybody we come in contact with, we can be kind to. And I think that maybe we have to think about it for a little while. We forgot to smile, we forgot to do this, but then it becomes part of who we are. And yes, even if, and I think also that kindness is an indication of whether we're loving enough, is that if we're doing something which is unkind, then this is what I felt with unschooling, or well, homeschooling, is that how do we know what's the right thing to do? If we're unkind, it's the wrong thing to do. So if what choices do we have? We won't go down the unkind one. And I think kindness is a very good indicator of where we should be going in life. And yeah, it's something we can do for everybody, even though we don't maybe love everybody unconditionally. We don't think of people in terms of love, but we do relate to everybody. We can relate to everybody with kindness. And all of Haley's posts, whether we're unschooling or not, I think are applicable to everybody. Whereas sometimes I think only people interested in unschooling would read what I've written, but certainly we should all go over to Haley's blog. And I'm still trying to persuade Haley to write a book, put all her kindness posts into a book, because I think there's a bigger scope there to reach a lot of people, because the world does need kindness. It's like I read somewhere, it's the oil that makes life easier for everybody when we're kind. Life can be difficult, but we can be kind. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to say, is that I really appreciate Haley's posts. And you have show notes, Erin, with these conversations?
I'm sorry.
Are you putting together some show notes?
Yes.
Because the articles that you linked to are wonderful of Haley's. We're lovely to direct other people towards those as well. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to thank Haley for that. And just to say how much I've enjoyed the conversation today. I get carried away sometimes.
Oh, thank you, Sue. It's been really lovely to chat with you.
been very nice.
Oh yeah, and Sue, I agree. Haley, your posts, I've passed them on to, I mean, not only people that aren't homeschooling, but some elderly people. So absolutely. Yeah. I mean, kindness is just kind of, yeah, it's a great message all the way around. I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much to all of you. And Haley, thank you for staying up so late.
Yeah.
No, it's been worth it. It's been lovely to see you all.
No, Haley, it was for my sake that you're staying up late. So thank you. If I wasn't part of the conversation, you would have been in bed a long time ago.
Oh,
so
well, I'm glad you were part of the conversation, Sue. So it's great. No problem.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Erin.
Thank you.
Bye.
And this ends our conversation today. We hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you'd like to connect further or see additional content, Erin can be found on the web and on Instagram at Everlearning. Ashley can be found on Instagram at Ashley as Mama and Storytime Shelves. And I, Haley, can be found on the web and on Instagram at Taking a Kinder Path. We'd love it if you'd share this conversation with anyone you think might like it. And if you've enjoyed this episode, maybe you'd consider leaving us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We're so grateful you made time in your day to listen to us chat. Thanks so much for listening.